My siblings and I love our dad. He wasn't around as much as he could have been, but he tried. We forgive him. He deeply cares, and we do too. In his older days, we care about him more than ever. When he remarried, he did it far too quickly, and in my opinion, made the wrong decision. I've only formulated that opinion after years of knowing her. He has never outright said this, but has alluded to it as well, during some serious conversations about this topic. My stepmother is the most emotionally hurtful person I have ever met in my life. Hurtful to us, to him, to my mother, and even her own children. The list of events is so long it's not worth recounting. I'll save the big one for the next paragraph to set up the current situation. She's got some borderline personality disorder that she refuses to acknowledge. We put up with it for years, and my dad never had our backs. I could tell he was just going through it too. So I never got upset that he didn't stop her from doing it to us. In hindsight, I realized that was no excuse, but I was a kid. I didn't know. My mom would get mad when she saw it, but I'd been persuaded by my father and older brother that we needed to just take it on the chin, and she was overreacting. Again, hindsight has revealed otherwise. As I got older and realized it and started to see my dad was allowing it, I stood up for myself. My sister followed suit, and I'm proud of her. The result was unexpected, though. She now just lies about us and abuses others that allow it, who are close to us, while refusing to speak to us altogether. She tries to use our relationships with her victims as leverage, mostly my dad. This peaked and exploded during my wedding. It was a small location wedding, just 40 people. I didn't invite my stepbrother, her son, for very good reasons, both practical and due to a fraught situation between him and the person officiating. I actually talked to him about it, and he understood. We're not close, but he's a reasonable enough guy. Problem solved, I thought. And hey, 40 people between my wife and I is not a lot. Most people understood. My stepmom took it as a personal attack and absolutely exploded. She never said a word to me, though. She targeted my dad. She attempted to prevent him from coming to the wedding, and it almost tore us apart because he actually almost agreed just to appease her months-long incessant berating. The end result was, she didn't come. By then she had said she wasn't coming, so she didn't get an invite. Then told my dad we had disinvited her and only let him stay for a few hours. She did this by still flying to the destination, getting a hotel 3 hours away, and changing their flights to a red-eye. Petty doesn't even begin to describe it. My dad just didn't fight it. I have never been so disappointed in my dad for not standing up for his kid in such an important moment. But I forgave him as much as I can so we could enjoy our time. I wasn't going to let it ruin my day. I told him we'll talk when it's all over, and I'm just happy he's here with me right now. He alluded that he knew how much it hurt me and that he's sorry. I know that he's being held hostage emotionally. I know she can make every day for him a living hell. Believe me when I say I've cut 90% of just this one scenario for length purposes. I'm not overstating when I say this woman is absolutely freaking cruel. She was disinvited from her own daughter's wedding for similar reasons. Now I have kids. The situation has changed. I will not allow this woman to emotionally abuse them. I will not allow her to abuse me in front of them. And ideally, I wouldn't allow her to abuse any of my family ever again, but especially in front of my kids. The issue is I want my kids to have a relationship with Grandpa. She's now holding that hostage too. Whenever that time comes, he'll call and say, maybe now isn't the best time. Or offers to meet at my brother's and shows up sullen and clearly emotionally beat. I know exactly what has happened even if it wasn't in front of us. He won't divorce her. They're so financially tied now, and I think he's got Stockholm Syndrome. He won't stand up for his kids, and we have long forgiven it, so we can still love him. I just wanted him to get time with his grandkids without going through hell. I want my kids to not see this woman abuse people in my family. What are my options from an outside perspective? Now, for a few comments before the update. Well, actually, this post did not have any comments. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, 3 months ago, I was at my wit's end with my stepmother and the way she was manipulating my dad and, by extension, our entire family. Things have taken a turn since then, and not necessarily for the better. It all started when I decided to take a more direct approach. I thought maybe if I could just sit down with my dad and have a heart-to-heart, away from her influence, we could come up with a plan. I arranged for us to meet at a neutral location, a small cafe we used to go to when I was a kid. I thought it would bring back some good memories and maybe soften him up a bit. When we met, I laid it all out. I told him how much it hurt me that he didn't stand up for me at my wedding, how I was worried about the impact his wife's behavior would have on my kids, and how I just wanted him to be a part of their lives without all the drama. He listened quietly, nodding along, and for a moment, I thought I was getting through to him. He even agreed to try and spend more time with us, away from her. But here's where I made a huge mistake. In my desperation to make him see reason, I mentioned that I had been talking to a lawyer about the possibility of getting a restraining order against her. I thought it would show him how serious I was, but instead it backfired spectacularly. He got really defensive, saying that I was trying to tear his marriage apart and that I didn't understand the complexities of their relationship. He stormed out of the cafe, and I was left sitting there, feeling like I had just made everything worse. A few days later, I got a call from my brother. Apparently, my dad had gone straight home and told my stepmother everything. She, of course, used it as ammunition to further isolate him from us. She convinced him that we were all out together and that we didn't care about his happiness. My brother said that Dad had been more distant than ever, barely returning calls and avoiding family gatherings. The fallout from this has been brutal. My dad missed my son's birthday party, something he had never done before. When I called to ask why, he gave some lame excuse about not feeling well, but I could hear her in the background, egging him on. It was clear she was behind it. My kids have started asking why Grandpa doesn't come around anymore, and I don't know what to tell them. My sister, who had been my ally in all this, started to pull back too. She said she couldn't handle the stress and that maybe we should just let Dad live his life, even if it meant we saw less of him. I felt betrayed, but I also understood. This whole situation has been exhausting for all of us. In the midst of all this, I found out something that added another layer to the mess. My stepmother had been married twice before, and both marriages ended in similar circumstances. She had a pattern of isolating her husbands from their families and then leaving them once they were completely dependent on her. I found this out through some old family friends who had known her for years. They said they had tried to warn my dad, but he wouldn't listen. This revelation made me even more determined to protect my dad, but it also made me realize how deep her manipulation ran. She wasn't just emotionally hurtful. She was a master at controlling people. I decided to dig deeper into her past, hoping to find something that could help me convince my dad to leave her. I found out that her first husband had actually filed for a restraining order against her, but it was never granted because he dropped the case. I managed to track him down and had a long conversation with him. He confirmed everything I had suspected and more. He said she had a way of making you feel like you were the crazy one, that you were the one causing all the problems. Armed with this new information, I tried to talk to my dad again. This time, I brought my brother along for support. We met at my brother's house, thinking it would be a safer environment. We laid out everything we had found, hoping it would be enough to make him see the light. But instead of being grateful, he got angry. He accused us of digging into her past to find dirt on her, and said that we were just trying to justify our own hatred. He said he loved her and that he wasn't going to leave her, no matter what we said. That was the last straw for me. I realized that no matter how much I wanted to save my dad, he didn't want to be saved. He had made his choice, and I had to respect that, even if it meant cutting him out of my life to protect my kids. In the weeks that followed, I focused on my own family. I made sure my kids knew they were loved and that they didn't need anyone else's approval to be happy. I also started seeing a therapist to help me deal with the emotional toll this whole situation had taken on me. One day, while I was at a therapy session, my therapist asked me about my childhood and my relationship with my dad. Before my stepmother came into the picture, I realized that I had always been seeking his approval, trying to be the perfect child so he would notice me. This need for validation had carried over into my adult life, making it hard for me to let go of the idea that I could save him. It was a tough pill to swallow, but it also gave me a sense of closure. I couldn't change my dad or his choices, but I could change how I reacted to them. I decided to focus on creating a healthy, loving environment for my own family. free from the toxicity that had plagued my childhood. So, that's where things stand now. My dad is still with her, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But I've made peace with it. My kids are happy and healthy, and that's what matters most to me. Thanks for reading. Aita for marrying my partner. Despite knowing he was in love with his boss. Firstly, I had a problem with him because one day he hid the fact that he was watching a movie with his female coworker, which we were going to break up over. But then he reassured that she was a friend and he can stop doing that. He apologized and said, I react differently about all this, so he didn't want to mention it. Anyways, I decided to stop overreacting and be happy with him, since he is a gem, and we are getting married in a month. Second incident. He said he is going to some work event where they were bowling, and he said he was going only because of his coworkers. When I mentioned some of them, he said he doesn't know if they were going, but when I mentioned her, he said yes, she is, which obviously means he is just going for her. After a lot of discussion, he told me he reduced it all, but I feel sad because I don't know why I have to lose a friend. I was sad for a bit, but still stuck on the fact that they should limit and respect my boundaries. For some context, his company is full of people in their 20s, and it's only like 50 people. Now for an update. We both just found out she is his boss. Also, my man and the girl's husband play video games sometimes together. Fourth incident. I saw his past texts, and they playfully wrote, I love you to each other. I don't even know what's going on here at this point. Fifth incident. He told me he has been mean to her these days because he hasn't responded to her texts. But I saw some direct messages being exchanged between them on Instagram, where he is left on read. It just feels like I have forced him to do this, and somehow I'm being guilt-tripped because it's oh so hard to not respond. He barely responds to me sometimes. Please be mindful that, yes, I wrote this bad stuff, but he is actually an angel otherwise, and it took me at least 6 years to find a soulmate. And I want to burn all my options before actually making this into something, basically a life-changing decision, since I will be marrying him in a month. I'd have to tell everyone in the friends and family, and not to mention the bad reputation we both would get at this point. Might be better than a divorce in the future, though. I have even considered just having a poly relationship and giving up on the fact that I might never have that pure love in my life. Maybe this is how it will pan out, and being in delusion will just make it all sufficient. Please advise. I have always come to this forum for relationship advice, which has all turned to a breakup. So maybe not a good idea to write this, but who knows if one of you here read this far and will give some good advice. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. He is super sketchy. It has been going on for too long. I would not trust him at that point. Maybe you could ask him to quit the job now so he can refocus on the relationship. But do you even want to give him that choice? It seems you have tried for quite a while. It might be better to start clean. Comment 2. Don't marry a man who lies to you and behaves in a way you don't like. You don't have to give anyone reasons for dumping him. Why do you think you have to? Walk away, block his number, and when family, friends ask, shrug your shoulders and say, he wasn't the right person. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the comments on my last post. So, a lot has happened in the past 3 months. We went ahead with the wedding, and for a while, things seemed to be going okay. I tried to put all my doubts and insecurities aside, thinking that maybe I was just overreacting. But then, things started to unravel. About a month after we got married, I noticed he was spending more time at work. He said it was because of a big project, and I wanted to believe him. But then I found out that his boss, the same woman from before, was also staying late. I confronted him about it, and he reassured me that it was purely professional. I wanted to trust him, so I let it go. But then, one night, he came home really late. He said he had been out with some coworkers, but he smelled like her perfume. I didn't say anything at first, but it ate away at me. I finally confronted him, and he admitted that he had been out with her. He swore it was just a friendly dinner, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. A few weeks later, I made a mistake that changed everything. I decided to check his phone while he was in the shower. I know it was wrong, but I was desperate for answers. What I found confirmed my worst fears. There were messages between him and his boss that were way too flirty for my comfort. They talked about how much they enjoyed spending time together and even made plans to meet up outside of work. I confronted him again, and this time he couldn't deny it. He admitted that he had developed feelings for her, but insisted that nothing physical had happened. He said he was confused and didn't know what to do. I was devastated. I felt like my whole world was falling apart. We decided to go to couples therapy to try to work things out. But every session felt like we were just going in circles. He kept saying he wanted to make our marriage work, but his actions didn't match his words. He was still spending a lot of time with her, and I couldn't help but feel like I was competing for his attention. Then, about a month ago, I found out that she and her husband were separating. My heart sank. I knew this would only complicate things further. I tried to talk to him about it, but he got defensive and accused me of not trusting him. It turned into a huge fight, and he ended up leaving the house for the night. When he came back the next day, he apologized and said he wanted to make things right. But I could see the guilt in his eyes. I knew he was torn between me and her, and it was tearing me apart. I started to feel like I was losing myself in all of this. I was constantly anxious and couldn't focus on anything else. A couple of weeks ago, I made another mistake. I decided to reach out to her. I wanted to hear her side of the story and understand what was really going on. We met up for coffee, and she was surprisingly open with me. She admitted that she had feelings for him too, but said she didn't want to come between us. She said she was trying to keep things professional, but found it hard because of their connection. I left that meeting feeling even more confused. I didn't know what to believe anymore. I felt like I was stuck in a nightmare with no way out. I tried to talk to him about it, but he got angry and accused me of going behind his back. It turned into another huge fight, and this time he left for a few days. When he came back, he said he needed some space to figure things out. He moved into a friend's place and said he would come back once he had some clarity. That was 2 weeks ago, and I haven't heard from him since. I feel like I'm in limbo, not knowing what's going to happen next. Looking back, I realized that I should have trusted my instincts from the beginning. I should have set firmer boundaries and not let things get this far. But now, it's too late. I'm left picking up the pieces of a broken marriage and trying to figure out where to go from here. Thanks for reading. Aita for confronting my brother's fiancé and causing their wedding to be postponed. My brother has been in a relationship with his fiancée for a couple of years. Their wedding is in the next few months. I come from a family with a pretty toxic dynamic, and I mostly stay to myself for my own mental health. We live about 12 hours driving distance from each other. I did keep a close-ish relationship with my brother until he moved in with his fiancée a year and a half ago. Slowly, I've been put to the side, and he's gotten closer to her family. Calls stopped coming in from him, and my calls stopped being returned. It culminated last year when he and his fiancée were on vacation 2 hours from my house and drove within 5 minutes of me both ways. He had sent a picture to a family group chat, and I realized he was near me. We set up a dinner where I would meet him where they were vacationing. The day before, he texted me and said that his fiancée wasn't feeling well and they were canceling. Apparently, she's done this before to other relatives and will go upstairs with a headache for hours at a time. I suggested that my husband and I drive up sometime soon and visit them, and he said that he would carve out some time in summer when she wasn't teaching. When summer came around, I brought it up again, and he said maybe instead we could do a family Thanksgiving. He went on several vacations with her family and siblings during the summer. They've had a series of family dramas, which has her entire extended family staying at their house for months at a time. This brings us to now. My mom was telling me that she's going to the bridal shower, and I realized that I hadn't been invited. I asked my brother if this was an oversight, and he told me that she was only inviting people that she was close to, and that it wasn't an accident. We have a small family, and this leaves me as the only person that wasn't invited. I got pretty upset, and honestly, the only reason she doesn't know me is because she, or maybe he, keeps canceling or shoving off plans to a future date. I told him that I love him and that I wanted to have a better relationship with him, but that I feel like I've been pushed out of his life. That was the end of March, and I've been left on red since then. I feel like he could have told me ahead of time that I was going to be excluded, so I didn't find out like that. My feelings are hurt. I don't know where to go from here with him. I don't think I'm wrong for being upset that I'm the only excluded relative. And honestly, we've all invited people we didn't know well or at all to showers, because that's what you do when when people are blending families, it feels like a snub. The more time has gone on, the less hurt I am, and the more I'm angry with him. I realized that when he was in crisis, I was there for him, however he needed. He even stayed with me for a while. When I was in a crisis, he wasn't there. He never called, he never checked on me. It's always been a bit one way, and only when he needs me to support him emotionally. My mom has made this worse by inserting herself and telling me that I need to suck it up. She's been excluded from plenty of things, none of which involved a sibling, and she's still bringing them up 40 plus years later. She's always invalidated my feelings in favor of no one talking out problems. I've never been able to say that something bothers me without it turning into me being the one who is the problem. She says he's overwhelmed by her family and just doesn't have time. Someone must have told her that it was weird, because she now agrees that she should have made the gesture, but that I should just suck it up and not do something I can't come back from. At this point, I really don't even want to go to the wedding. I'm going to have to fly across the country, it's in another state, and use up a significant portion of my vacation for people who are snubbing me and disregarding my feelings. Do I go? Has anyone dealt with something like this? Any advice, please? Now, for a few comments before the update. Well, actually, this post didn't have any comments. Now, for the update, thanks for reading my last post. So, a lot has happened since then, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything. After I posted, I decided to send my brother a long email explaining how I felt. I poured my heart out, hoping he would understand where I was coming from. I didn't expect a response right away, but I was hopeful. A week went by with no reply, and I started to feel even more isolated. Then, out of the blue, my mom called me. She said she had spoken to my brother and that he was feeling overwhelmed with everything going on. She suggested that I should just let it go and focus on my own life. This wasn't what I wanted to hear, but I decided to take her advice and try to move on. Then, about 2 weeks later, I got a call from my brother. He apologized for not getting back to me sooner and said he wanted to talk things through. We set up a time to chat, and I was cautiously optimistic. When we finally talked, he explained that his fiancée had been feeling a lot of pressure from her family, and that it was affecting their relationship. He admitted that he had been distant, but said it wasn't intentional. He promised to make more of an effort to include me in their lives. I felt a bit better after our conversation, but things took a turn when I made a mistake that changed everything. I decided to reach out to his fiancée directly, thinking it might help to clear the air. I sent her a message saying I wanted to get to know her better and that I hoped we could start fresh. I thought I was being sincere and open, but it backfired. She responded with a curt message saying that she didn't appreciate me going behind my brother's back and that she felt I was trying to manipulate the situation. I was shocked and hurt. I hadn't meant to cause any trouble, but it seemed like I had made things worse. My brother called me later that day, clearly upset. He said his fiancée was really hurt by my message and that it had caused a huge argument between them. He asked me to give them some space and let things cool down. Feeling defeated, I decided to take a step back. I didn't want to cause any more problems for my brother. But then, a few days later, I got a call from my mom. She said that my brother and his fiancée had decided to postpone the wedding. Apparently, the stress of everything had taken a toll on their relationship, and they needed time to sort things out. I felt terrible, thinking that my actions had contributed to their decision. In the midst of all this, I started to reflect on my own life and my relationship with my family. I realized that I had always been the one to reach out and try to mend things, but it was rarely reciprocated. I thought back to when my brother had stayed with me during his crisis and how I had been there for him. It hurt to think that he couldn't do the same for me. Around this time, I also started to remember some things from our childhood that I had pushed to the back of my mind. Our family had always been dysfunctional, with my mom often invalidating my feelings and my brother being the golden child. I remembered how my mom would always tell me to suck it up and not make a fuss, even when I was genuinely hurt. It was a pattern that had continued into adulthood, and I was finally starting to see it for what it was. As I was processing all of this, I got a call from my brother. He said he wanted to meet up and talk things through in person. I was hesitant, but I agreed. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. He looked tired and stressed, but he seemed sincere. He apologized for how things had turned out and said he wanted to make things right. He explained that he had been feeling a lot of pressure from his fiance's family and that it had affected his judgment. He admitted that he had been neglecting our relationship and promised to do better. We talked for a long time, and I felt like we were finally making some progress. He said he wanted to include me more in his life and that he would talk to his fiancée about making an effort to get to know me better. I left the meeting feeling hopeful but cautious. A few days later, I got a message from his fiancée. She apologized for her earlier response and said she wanted to start fresh. She invited me to lunch so we could get to know each other better. I was nervous but agreed to go. We met at a small cafe, and to my surprise, we had a good conversation. She explained that she'd been feeling overwhelmed by her family's expectations and that it had affected her relationship with my brother. She admitted that she had been unfair to me and wanted to make things right. As we talked, I started to see her in a different light. She wasn't the villain I had made her out to be in my mind. She was just someone who was struggling with her own issues, much like I was. We agreed to try to build a better relationship and to communicate more openly. In the weeks that followed, things started to improve. My brother and I talked more regularly, and I even started to build a rapport with his fiancée. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I still had my reservations about the wedding, but I decided to go. I wanted to support my brother and show that I was willing to make an effort. Looking back, I realized that my mistake had actually led to some positive changes. It forced us to confront the issues that had been simmering beneath the surface and to start working on them. It wasn't easy, and there were still a lot of unresolved feelings, but it was a step in the right direction. Thanks for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.